talk on, what is it you're talking about? Catching the sunlight.
Yes.
About solar and planetary imaging. And Alan is the president of Great Aerographics, and he's an avid astrophotographer. Many of us know him from the astrophysics group. You've seen his posts there, right? Over the years. I don't say much, but I usually monitor them. And I think you do a lot of work. You said you did work down here in Key West with
It's here.
graphics
I've
artists.
been to. Oh yeah, that's right. We do work down here. Our company sells stuff too.
So, but I'll go ahead and hand it over to you and let you go ahead and get started.
Great. Everybody hear me okay with that mic? So it's great to see you guys here. How many of you are interested in planetary imaging, observing?
Don't raise your hand. But
Good, good. That's mostly what I do. I want to start off with this quick slide here. Everybody know about this event? At 2:39.5 this afternoon, the space station is going to transit the sun. Not for Winter Star Party, it won't be visible here, but it will be visible for Marathon, Southern Ending Marathon Key. This is the path of the transit. So I'm going to
what's the width?
You know, I don't know. Hopefully wider than the line that's shown on it. I figure I'm going to set up on this road over here. It's a nice, there's something called Pigeon Key there. It looks like a quiet road. I'm going to hope that I can get there in time. I've done a little testing to make sure that I can do it in white light. And we'll see. It's a good transit because it's happening at 2:30, so the sun is high. The space station will be close. It's a high pass. I believe it's 40 seconds, the width of the space station. So it's good size.
How long is the transit time?
You know, I didn't time it. They're generally less than a second.
Yeah.
It's fast. So you need a streaming camera of some sort. It's crazy. I was going to blow it off, and then I decided, what the heck? I drove 1,800 miles, and I got a transit 20 miles away. So we're going to give it a try, and I'll keep everybody posted on what we. I use a 1600 by 1200 streaming PGR Scorpion camera. You'll see pictures of it in a little bit. Yeah, it should work well. So this is where I live. I have a lot of slides to share with you. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of my work that some of you may already know, and I'm going to share some stories of a couple of recent adventures that were kind of a lot of fun. So you're going to get a taste of a bunch of things. I have about 200 slides, so I'm going to move quickly. I hear there's an ice cream social tomorrow. I'm going to race out of here at 1:30 and try and catch this thing. So feel free to interrupt me with something that you want to know more about, but I'll be around till the end of the week, and I'd love to talk with you more. So this is where I live. This is Buffalo, New York, on the first day of spring. Our street is east-west, and the sun rises in the east, as it's wont to do. And this shows you what spring looks like in Buffalo. It's not an ideal place to do astronomy, and it's probably one of the little interesting things about what I do is I do it from here. But one of the beautiful things is you do get to see the reflection of the sun in the store windows on Elmwood Avenue on the first day of spring. Kind of a temple to, a modern temple to. So my talk is all about sunlight. I'm into sunlight. Everything I take a picture of is either the sun or is lit by reflected light from the sun. That's the mighty Niagara River. This is the view from the top of the Buffalo Museum of Science, which is a wonderful 150-year-old institution that I hold an honorary title of Research Associate in Astronomy, which along with 25 cents will get you on the Staten Island Ferry, which I understand is now free. And I do a little bit of traveling for astronomy. This is my summer haunt in New Hampshire, and a beautiful double rainbow of the sun that we saw there. But this talk is going to be all about what you can see with sunlight. And it's all for people who don't hate the moon.
The only reason to hate the moon, it's always clear when it's full moon.
One of the fascinating things about trying to do this stuff, all of this work in planetary photography, and one of the things that I love about the work that I attempt to do is trying to capture stuff that the eyes do a beautiful job of. This is a beautiful image of the Earth-lit section of the moon taken by Stefan Seip from Germany, good friend, which of course is gorgeous, but when we look at the sun, it doesn't really look like that at early crescent. It looks more like that because our eyes can accommodate huge dynamic ranges that our cameras can't do. So making pictures of the sun and the moon and the planets involve aesthetic decision-making to create an accurate picture, but to reflect the full dynamic range of these amazing objects. Sometimes the best sight is without the telescope. That's what these last two pictures show. So I focus mainly on what I like to call high-resolution solar system astronomy, which has nothing to do with quality. It just has to do with using your optical system at the longest focal length possible. These are not high-resolution images. They're pretty images, but mostly what I do is I use a 10-inch Mac at a focal length of about 7.5 to 11 meters. And I'll share a story with you in a little while about a telescope I got to use in September that has a focal length of 24 meters, which was an interesting challenge all of its own. And I'll share with you at the end of the talk. Have any of you seen this image? No. Okay, well that's interesting. Because this is an interesting image that had a viral run in November, and I'll tell you a little bit about that experience. It was quite interesting. This is what the moon looks like at the main focus of my 10-inch Mac, 3.7 meter focal length. So this is also not a high-resolution image, but at 3.7 meters, I can capture some nice detail and make a nice big panorama with a relatively small camera. This picture is called Kleine Eine Nachtmusik. That's the reason it's called Kleine Eine is because Eine, do all of you know Eine or Ina? It's a very small caldera that's about 30 meters deep. Very difficult object. It's Chuck Wood's item 100 on the Lunar 100. Difficult to see, but it's actually in this image, and you can see depth in it. But I won't take you back and show it there. It's not worth looking at it too close. But at this focal length, we can capture the rill in the Alpine Valley and a nice number of craterlets on Plato. And this is my 10-inch Mac working at its prime focal length. I don't know how good the images look projected. They usually don't look quite as nice.
Look real good.
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
This is of course Ptolemaeus and the Catena Davy, and this little craterlet here is named Allen, which I always like. Not after me, of course. And this is these are taken at 7.5 meters with my 10-inch astrophysics MacCast, which is a wonderful scope for planetary imaging. And I'm sorry that I'm getting too old to lug it down here. I hope to bring it, but I traveled in a small car, Aristarchus. And the Sinus Iridium, of course. So we all know this story, right? I mean, we're all, any of us doing imaging or doing stuff that would have been impossible, fairly recently. This is a 20-year-old image of Saturn taken through a 2.5-meter telescope, and an image to compare it to taken with a telescope of 1/10 the aperture in downtown Buffalo, New York, 15 years later. So this stuff all looks really good until you start looking at some of these things. And people wonder, and I wonder sometimes, why the hell am I doing this? Getting up in the middle of the night. Cassini is taking the most breathtaking images ever taken, I think. And I can get pretty decent resolution on a good day from my backyard with my 90mm hydrogen alpha filter. But now we have the Solar Dynamics Observatory, which again is imaging full 360 degrees of the sun. What do we need me for? Except they forgot to take that dust down there. I don't know who's going to go up there and fix that.
They go at night.
But a lot of what we can do as amateurs is we can really focus on this stuff. We can show the effects over time beautifully. This is a little panorama of Saturn taken from 2004 through 2009. This, of course, is a fabricated image prepared from this image, because when that moment was seen, the sun was, I believe, 8 degrees from Saturn, and it wasn't possible to take pictures. But we can use our work to prepare interesting portrayals of the solar system over time, and that's one of the loves that I have, is to try and tell good stories, both for dedicated observers and for amateurs and for people in the public who just want to be wowed by what's out there in the universe. So I'm not going to bore you with 6,000 planetary and lunar images, but just show you a few recent ones. This from the most recent apparition of Mars, which is an object that likes a bigger telescope than mine, and of course, beauty of Venus. But over time, we can see magical stuff. This was a dust storm. Sure, Don remembers this one. It was October 2005, I think. Over a couple of days, it was a beautiful dust storm, only visible. Europeans didn't get to see this at all. It was only us Americans. And it outlines the beautiful Valles Marineris, which is not really visible from Earth unless it's filled with dust, which is a wonderful thing. It shows us the shape of the largest valley in the solar system. A couple of recent high-resolution solar sunspot images that were taken with the 10-inch Mac in a rare moment of good seeing over a couple of days. This shows the division of this sunspot as it split, and as it moved off onto the limb. It became 2 discrete sunspots. So, fun stuff you can watch. And of course, making movies, we can watch the incredibly dynamic sun, which changes in certain prominences over a very short period of time. This one is one of my favorites. Some people really do a great job with this. I rarely have enough time to image over a long stretch, but this shows you something. Sun prominences are almost always looping events that are involved with magnetic polar regions. And here you can see the shape of this loop going backwards, where sometimes the shape appears to have no relation to a loop at all. Here you can watch it going front and back. So I do a lot of solar prominence work. I really love these things. I love naming them. I love finding what they look like. I don't know if you can read it, but I've got a lot of little names on here. This is one of my favorites, like an angel falling to earth. And the picture of me is in there because of the goatee on the bottom prominence. So just a quick look at some of these solar prominences. This is one of the things that a non-double stacked hydrogen alpha filter will do a great job with. So if you're looking for a good reason not to buy 2 heavy hydrogen alpha filter etalons and stick them on the front of your already top heavy refractor, they come out better. It's a better tool for shooting prominences. It's always good to have a good excuse for not spending an extra $5,000. Anybody know what this one looks like? You see it? What's that? Radio telescope? No, it's not, actually. It is Sasquatch. I remember this image. I had to hunt for it. This is one of my favorites. This was taken a number of years ago at a point when I was doing work that I don't like as much as what I'm doing today. But what I love about this image is it was one of the amateur images chosen from the Earth to the Universe, which is a marvelous show for the International Year of Astronomy a couple of years ago. And it played all over the world with, of course, a lot of professional images, but there are a handful of amateur images in there, and only a couple of planetary images. I think one from me and one from Greg People. So that was really very exciting. If you want to know what it looks like through my 10-inch Mac, it looks much more beautiful than this, but this gives you a sense of Saturn and reasonably decent seeing in Buffalo, New York, which is about what we had last night, not particularly good. So, as you might guess, it's a little bit of a labor of love to do this stuff. This is what I would call seeing that is better spent sleeping than imaging. And this was not good seeing, but a very large prominence. You'll see more about this one later. So, of course, scale has something to do with it. So you can do a decent image, even in poor seeing, if you have enough image scale. This was that prominence a couple of days later. It was a really glorious glorious event. This one was very tall. One of my big thrills with this stuff is naming these images. I really love it. It's very helpful to those of you that want to publish some of these things. You come up with good names. It really helps to sell it to the editors of Astronomy Picture of the Day and Tony Phillips. Sorry?
I won't interrupt. Do you have any guess how tall it is?
You know, I did, and I don't have it memorized, but if you hunt for this on my website, it's there. I shouldn't guess because I'll guess it wrong, but you can tell from the curvature of the sun that this is really a very tall event. It was one of those providences that let go, the magnetic field let it go. So this was a short-lived event. It was disappeared fairly quickly.
That was a quarter of the Earth, a quarter of the sun. It's like 25 Earths high. Big.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking it was. I'm going to remember that was most of the way from the Earth to the Moon. So I'm thinking about 200,000 miles, something along those lines. I called it the tallest of allest, if you remember Dr. Seuss. And just some recent solar images. This is a very beautiful filament that looked almost like the fog in San Francisco, clinging to the.
Can you see any of this granulation pre-processing?
Oh yes. Yeah, this chromospheric detail is quite dramatic in a 90 millimeter telescope. Not as contrasting, but definitely visible. One of the things that I explore are ways to present the sun to create an interesting aspect, an understandable aspect. So going back between these two, you'll notice that the chromosphere is reversed. This is actually a pure reversal of the other image. And as with galaxies, it allows you to see details when it's in positive that are hard to see in negative.
You know, you don't color the promises, which is really good. I love that effect. It's just fun of what you do.
Well, you know, the prominences are beautiful, and to show them with all of the outlying ends of them, you have to make them brighter than they appear to the eye.
That's the way to go.
A couple of recent, my latest, this is one of my favorite ones. This is called the Squiggle and the Dot, these two. These were over the course of a couple of days. So just a couple of brief looks at how I do my work. This is a typical workflow for Saturn. I image with a black and white camera. So I'm taking red, green, and blue streams, combining them into RGB, and sometimes, because the seeing is so bad in the blue where I am, if it doesn't compromise the aspect of my subject, I'll use a red and green luminance layer over to improve the detail. You can get away with that in Saturn. You can't get away with that in Mars and preserve the aspect of the planet accurately. So sometimes the seeing is fairly good. This was a night of very good seeing, and I'll just take you on a quick run through of how this is done. This was the original stack from this. I obviously stack multiple images. I align them in a lot of different places, called multiple alignment processing, and then apply sensitive processing to sharpen them, trying to get off at the subway stop before me. If you know that joke, how do I get to the Metropolitan Museum of Art? It's easy, just get off at the subway stop before me. So you got to stop before you've done too much. And this was done when I only had a small camera, so I used mosaicing techniques to create a bigger field. And that's a little rundown of how this image was put together out of small pieces. So you don't need a big camera to do big pictures. It's a great way to start with a 640 by 480 camera. You can tell people that you do this work with a camera chip that's smaller than what's in their cell phone. Nowadays, way smaller than what's in the cell phone. So a typical day of awful seeing on the sun. But the beautiful thing about solar imaging, unlike planetary imaging, where generally you got bad seeing for the night. It might get better, but it's not going to be fantastic seeing. With the sun, this is 1:42, 12 minutes later, I had this. That's quite a transformation. And that can be just the difference of the sun being over an asphalt roof behind my house and being in between the houses. So I go through and I'll pick the best frames from this little movie. I align it multiple times because the image will not line up if I align it once. And I apply sensitive sharpening once again. And a little bit of contrast enhancement. Just a little primer on sharpening. I'm not going to talk about this because it's a whole other talk, but the original stack is over there. This is what I did, and this is too much. Knowing what is too much is 90% of good image processing in planetary imaging. And it's all about trying to preserve an accurate aspect of what you're taking a picture. One of the things that I enjoy doing, that just like with white light in your face when you're doing deep sky stuff, white light in your face with a solar image makes you see less. So that's the reason we put these black occulting discs. If you go back before and look at the two of these, you can really start to see the subtle extensions of the prominence much better like that. And if you colorize it just a little bit, I enjoy going toward the yellow end of the sepia stuff. Your eye is most sensitive to the yellow-green end of the spectrum, so it makes it even a little better visibly, and it also makes it prettier, which, as an artist by trade, pretty is kind of important. That may be one place where my image is sometimes a little different than others. I like pretty pictures. Trying to remember why this is here. Oh yes, just to show you the development of this image. This one used this is one single frame, which I processed a little bit to create this. So you get a lot of light from the sun, and you can often get by with one frame. Okay, anybody needs to stretch? We're doing good. We're halfway through the talk, and now I'm going to take you on to a little bit of a couple of journeys. This is me with my 10-inch Mac in my Buffalo backyard. You can see the power lines in the back. My friend Brian set up our telescope right near the power line, so I feel right at home. It's 3 o'clock. The sun disappeared behind the power lines, and picture taking is done for the day. Roland's 10-inch Mac is a really amazing telescope. Very small central obstruction, f14.6. And this is a scope that I call Little Big Man. This is the F5 Astrophysics Stowaway, a rare telescope, incredibly corrected. I found no advantage using I have a Zeiss APQ 130 that I can put my 90mm filter on. There's no advantage to using it. So this is, as far as I know, the world's smallest 90mm H-alpha telescope. And I'll show you some pictures of it in a few minutes just to give you a sense of how small it is. Here it is riding on top of my 900 mount with a bigger refractor. It's a 155. Here's my daughter Sophie holding the stowaway. It's 14 inches long.
Wow.
And these are two of my little webcams, just to show you the 640 by 480 camera on the right and a little larger array on the left. I'm now using that Silver Scorpion, which has a bigger chip. Fun stuff with these things. You know they're sensitive to infrared light, and if you use an infrared filter, you can do cool things taking pictures of the planets, but you can also do some very neat terrestrial stuff. This is my daughters in infrared, and this is them in blue light. Kind of an interesting contrast. Can you guess which one they like better?
Yeah.
And of course, you can enjoy the foliage in infrared light as well. And just a little bit of a portrait of my astrophysics family. I've been very lucky to have been able to buy these when the economy was good and my business was big and people bought greeting cards. Here's the maker of these telescopes. I had a rare pleasure of getting a visit to astrophysics after the Midwest Astro Imaging Conference last summer. Dave Jarosevich, who's off the field there to the right, who's the director of Mount Wilson Observatory, superintendent, and I drove out there on a Sunday, and Roland and Marge met us. And we had a nice private tour, and I got to ride in Roland's, whatever the hell, souped up, I think it's a Mustang he's driving now, and watch him accelerate a muscle car. He's a very gentle, mild-mannered man, unless he wants to show off in his car. Astrophysics is an amazing organization. If you're on a list for a telescope and it upsets you, buy something else. Buy an accessory. You will be amazed at what you get for your money. And their organization, their attention to detail is expressed very nicely by the organization of these boxes. These are old tubes that at one point they used for telescope tubes, which are now CNC machined. So these tubes are used to make the piers that astrophysics sells. Roland posing with his teeth and a gear turning that doesn't have teeth yet. It's just a beautiful place. The machining, I'm not a machinist, I've never done work in metal, I do some woodworking, but the attention to detail in astrophysics is extraordinary. These are the tube ends that the focuser goes into. And some dovetail plates. This is Marge. Anybody guess what this is? You might recognize it if you put a diagonal slice.
Oh,
It's a Max Bright diagonal. So if you ever buy that Max Bright diagonal, compare it to the other high-end diagonals that are out there, you really get your money's worth with an astrophysics accessory. And this is a motor housing from the mount, which I know nothing about, but Marge and Roland are very proud of the amount of machining that goes into this. There's nothing cast, it's all CNC machined, and a gear housing. This is their old machine shop and their new machine shop. Those of you who know CNC lathes that I don't might enjoy the power that they have behind their mount making, and virtually all of their parts are made there, hollowed out there. This is the El Capitan mount in production. They're top of the line, 3600, I believe a 250 pound capacity. There's Wally. Wally is standing by an 800 mount. Those of you who might remember back, they still keep an 800 mount in the shop there so that they can continue to service them and test out any problems with 20, 25-year-old mounts. This is a worm gear, not to be dropped for an El Capitan. Mated with its, and I love this, these are smaller mount worm gears in egg crates. And Roland giving us a little lecture in the optical options, the optical glass options that he's explored over the years, a piece of very clear rivet glass. Look at the transparency of that glass. Isn't that something else? But what astrophysics uses is the middle one, which is a rough square blank. This one has been shaped. A whole talk in itself. I was so busy listening to Roland, I unfortunately didn't get the pictures I would have liked. But some pictures of Roland's Opticam grinding machine, which I believe will turn out a rough, round, spherical surface, quite accurate in about 18 minutes, which lets Roland spend his time figuring and polishing. This machine was designed to grind sapphire nose cones for fighter jets. It uses a diamond encrusted tool. And this is set, and this was as far as we got to see. He didn't grind any glass for us. Pitch lap tool, and this, there are a whole pile of stations, beautiful grit patina for the, and the golden area where Roland does his final image processing, where he takes down microscopic levels of glass in combination, in concert, I should say, with this interferometer. They'll make markings in Sharpie. The place, of course, is spotless. Roland is I wouldn't call him anal, but he's very careful, which anyone who has an astrophysics class can appreciate in there. And the final polishing is done with a little bit of grit and Roland's fingers, where he'll remove microscopic amounts of material to do the final finish. And the holy grail here, a little box of 130 triplets taped up, and here Roland's trying to explain to me the design of the Honder's astrograph, which is what he was working on there, which is I will attempt to explain to you, but it's basically a reflective refractor, which Roland gave a nice talk about at DEEF a couple of years ago. And here it is, the bottom of those two scopes. The Honder's is the lower one. It's very short, 12-inch, f3.8, I believe. And above it is Roland's experimental 12-inch Mac, which I doubt will ever go into production. I believe he's a little disappointed in the performance based compared to the work and the cost of it. And here's my buddy Dave. Dave is a really wonderful guy that I got to know well on our drive back and forth from astrophysics. We have a lot of stuff in common, age and family, and we enjoyed each other's company. So in September, Dave gave me a call, and he said that he had a little window of opportunity, and would I have any interest in going out to Mount Wilson around the opposition of Jupiter and using the 60-inch telescope. And I had a pretty busy couple of weeks. I had to think about it for about 45 seconds. And I said, I think I can make that work. So I drove out to Chicago, dropped my daughter off at school, moved her stuff into her sorority, drove my car. Actually, I got a cab over to O'Hare, got to California. By 3 o'clock, Dave met me at the airport, and we were up at Mount Wilson before sunset. And this is the view up at the top. I have a lot of slides. I have a whole separate talk on my experience at Mount Wilson, which was really a magical time. I absolutely loved it. Have any of you ever been up there? Oh, nice number of you. Good. So you've got